Imagine being trapped in a place of oppression, with no way out, until one man, with a bold message, leads an entire nation to freedom. In today's episode, we dive into the incredible story of Exodus, a story of divine deliverance, struggle, and faith. From the burning bush to the parting of the Red Sea, Exodus reveals God's power to rescue and transform. How does this ancient story still apply to our struggles today? Let's journey together into a story that shapes the very heart of faith.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into the book of Exodus.
Exodus, yeah.
A story a lot of people think they know, but it's got so many layers to it.
It does.
And I'm really excited to jump into those layers with you today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of it as just a story of liberation.
Right.
And certainly it is that.
Yeah.
But it's also a story about identity,
Yeah.
about covenant,
Right.
about really the beginnings of a nation, of the Israelite nation.
And you know what else strikes me about it?
What's that?
It's just how much it reflects, like, these universal human experiences.
Yeah.
Even though it's, an ancient text.
Thousands of years old.
It's like you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like happening right now.
Right.
In different ways.
That's what makes it so fascinating. I mean, the themes of Exodus are things that we grapple with today. I mean, freedom, oppression, the search for meaning. I mean, these are things that resonate across cultures and centuries.
Okay, so we start off, with the Israelites.
Right. Yes.
They're enslaved in Egypt.
Right.
And they're this people.
There are people without a nation.
Right.
They are a community longing for freedom.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you think about forced labor
Yeah.
back then.
I mean, that was common.
It wasn't.
That was a tool of empires
Right.
to build their wealth.
Right.
I mean, the Israelites' plight reflects a universal human experience.
Yeah.
The struggle against oppression.
And just picture this.
Mm-hmm.
The Pharaoh,
Yeah.
orders the killing of all Hebrew baby boys.
It's a chilling thought.
This guy.
And you know what that does?
What?
That sets the stage for the birth and rescue of a leader
Right.
who will change everything.
Moses.
Moses, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about Moses a little bit.
Yeah.
Because his story in itself is pretty remarkable.
His story is wild. I mean, raised in the lap of luxury in Pharaoh's court,
Right.
right? And then kills an Egyptian
Yeah.
and has to flee, finds refuge with these Midianite shepherds.
Like a total change of scenery.
Total change of scenery,
Yeah.
living a simple life.
Yeah. And then enter the burning bush.
Can you imagine seeing a burning bush?
I can't even imagine.
Talking to you.
Yeah. I mean, how would you react to that?
I think I'd run in the other direction.
It's a moment that forces Moses to confront his past,
Mm-hmm.
his fears, his destiny. I mean, it's a turning point.
Okay, so God reveals his name
Yeah.
to Moses at this point.
And it's not just any name. It's I am WHO I am.
That's powerful.
It's powerful. And it's a statement of self-existence,
Mhm.
power beyond human comprehension.
Right. So, what does that mean for Moses?
I mean, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It challenges everything he thought he knew
Mm-hmm.
about the world
Mm-hmm.
and his place in it.
Okay, so now Moses is like, okay, I've talked to God. Burning bush. I am. WHO. I am. I got to go back to Egypt and face Pharaoh.
Yeah. Armed with this new understanding,
Yeah.
he goes back to confront Pharaoh and demands the release of his people.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't just a political power struggle.
Right.
It's a clash of worldviews.
Okay.
Pharaoh represents that established order,
Mm,
the belief in human power, human control.
right.
Moses is speaking for a God who defies human limitations.
Right.
A God who hears the cries of the oppressed.
Okay, so Pharaoh's not really budging at first.
No.
So then things start to get
Things get pretty
a
intense.
little intense.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
we're talking plagues of biblical proportions.
The Nile turning to blood.
Yeah. Frogs everywhere. Darkness consuming the day.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
It would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to ask, were these just random acts of chaos?
Right.
I mean, there's debate about that.
Yeah.
Could they have been natural phenomena?
But they seem pretty targeted.
The timing, the specific targets, it
Mm.
suggests something more. Each plague targeted a specific Egyptian deity,
Oh, wow.
exposing their impotence before Yahweh.
So it's like a direct challenge.
Yeah. This was a systematic dismantling
Yeah.
of the Egyptian worldview.
It's like their whole system of belief is being shaken.
Yes.
Okay, so we get to the final plague,
This is where it gets really heavy.
the death of the firstborn.
Yeah.
And this is where we see the institution of Passover.
The Israelites are spared
Right.
by marking their doorposts with the blood of a lamb.
A lamb.
This act of obedience
Mhm.
becomes this symbol of protection.
Right.
A powerful image of God's mercy and judgment.
It's a chilling scene, for sure.
It is.
And you know what else it makes me think of?
What's that?
It foreshadows
Yes.
a greater sacrifice.
The Passover lamb points towards Christ's sacrifice,
Right.
which would offer redemption for all humanity.
So even in this Old Testament story,
Mhm.
we see these hints
These glimpses
of the New Testament.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
The Passover reminds us that freedom comes at a cost,
Yeah.
and it's a cost borne by both the oppressed and the oppressor.
It's a complex event, full of these layers of meaning.
And it continues to challenge us
Yeah.
to grapple with questions of justice, mercy, and the consequences of our choices.
So after all this, Pharaoh finally lets the Israelites go.
He does. But the story doesn't end there.
Oh no.
Pharaoh changes his mind.
Oh.
Consumed by regret and rage,
Wow.
he sends his army to recapture the fleeing Israelites.
So they're free,
Yeah,
but they're not really free.
no, they find themselves trapped
Oh my gosh.
between a vast sea
Uh-oh.
and a pursuing army.
It's like out of the frying pan into the fire.
It seems utterly hopeless,
I would be freaking out.
and it's a moment that tests their faith.
Right.
They've experienced miracles.
Yeah.
But can they trust God
To deliver them.
to deliver them from this impossible situation?
And that brings us to
The parting of the Red Sea.
one of the most iconic events
All right.
in the Bible.
I mean, this isn't just a grand spectacle. This
Right.
is a symbolic act.
Okay.
The sea, a symbol of chaos and the unknown, becomes a path to freedom.
Wow.
God makes a way where there seems to be no way.
Imagine witnessing that.
The terror and the exhilaration as the waters part,
Yeah.
allowing the Israelites to walk through on dry land.
And then the sea crashes down,
Yeah,
engulfing the Egyptian army.
it's a powerful image.
Yeah. So this is a pivotal moment for the Israelites.
It solidifies their faith in Yahweh's power,
Mm-hmm.
and it marks a definitive break from slavery.
They're free.
They're free, but their journey's far from over.
Oh, of course not.
Mm.
This is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning.
So they've escaped Egypt.
Mhm.
They've crossed the Red Sea.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, their next challenge is the wilderness.
The wilderness.
The vast and unforgiving terrain.
I didn't talk about going from one extreme to another.
Right. They go from slavery to freedom
Yeah.
and then into this harsh environment.
So they're free, but they're still facing all these
They're
challenges.
facing hunger,
Yes.
thirst,
Yeah.
and their own internal struggles. As they journey towards a future that is still uncertain.
I mean, that's such a human experience.
It is.
To go through these moments of like, okay, I thought I was going to be free.
Yeah.
And it's not quite what I expected.
The honeymoon phase is over.
Right.
Right. They've escaped physical bondage.
Yeah.
But now they face a different kind of test.
You kind of test.
The test of faith. Perseverance. Learning to trust God in the unknown.
So the wilderness becomes this proving ground.
It becomes a crucible
Yeah.
where their faith is refined
Mm.
and their relationship with God is deepened.
It's interesting because it's like,
Yeah.
you think about it, like we all go through our own wildernesses
We do.
in life.
Absolutely.
And it's in those moments that,
That our faith is tested.
right,
That we learn the true meaning of dependence, of provision,
the faithfulness of God,
of the faithfulness of God.
who walks with us,
Yeah.
even through the toughest times.
Even through the toughest times, that's the beauty of the Exodus story.
So they're in the wilderness.
They're in the wilderness.
What happens next?
They arrive at Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai. Okay, this is a big one.
This is a big one. A place that will forever change their destiny.
Right.
God establishes a formal covenant with them,
The covenant.
a covenant that will shape their identity
Mhm.
and their relationship with Him for generations to come.
So this is where we get the 10 Commandments.
That's right.
Those famous 10 Commandments.
But it's not just about a set of rules.
Mhm.
It's about a framework for a new way of life.
Okay.
A life lived in covenant with God.
So it's like they're escaping physical slavery,
Yes.
but they're also,
Embracing a new way of being.
okay,
A new understanding of their relationship with God and their responsibility to each other.
that's powerful.
The giving of the 10 Commandments
Mhm.
at Mount Sinai marks a turning point.
Okay.
They are no longer just a group of freed slaves.
Right.
They're becoming a nation, a people set apart,
Wow.
bound by a covenant with a God who has chosen them.
And who promises to guide them? It's an
Exactly.
incredible moment,
It is.
full of like weight and significance.
Absolutely.
So they've come so far,
Mm-hmm.
but their journey's not over.
No, it's just beginning.
What challenges did they face?
Well,
as they try to live out this covenant.
Even with a covenant in place, even after experiencing miracles,
Yeah.
human nature
Yeah.
is still prone to doubt.
And temptation.
And temptation.
So they're going to mess up.
Oh, yeah. They're going to mess up big time.
Oh, boy.
But that's part of the story.
It's part of the human story.
It's the human story.
So how do they navigate these challenges?
That's a great question.
And what lessons do they learn along the way?
That's what we're going to explore in our next segment.
All right, so stay tuned because the story of Exodus is far from over.
Far from over. Okay, so we're back.
Back in the wilderness.
Back in the wilderness with the Israelites.
Yep.
They've received the 10 Commandments. They've made this covenant with God.
A new way of life. A new way of life.
Right.
And then God says, okay, now build me a tabernacle.
Yeah.
A tabernacle. What's a tabernacle?
So imagine this. It's a portable temple.
A portable temple.
A physical manifestation of God's presence.
Okay.
Right there among his people.
So it's not like a permanent structure.
No.
Like a temple, you'd imagine.
No, it's portable.
Why portable?
Because God's presence isn't confined to a specific location.
Oh, I see.
It travels with his people.
It's like he's saying, I'm with you wherever you go.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
Their relationship with God is dynamic.
Okay.
It evolves as they journey towards the promised land.
So it's not just about a physical structure.
Yeah.
It's about
a relationship that's constantly moving forward.
I like that.
Yeah. And the tabernacle itself was full of symbolism.
Okay, let's talk about that symbolism.
So at the heart of the tabernacle
Yeah.
was the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant.
This was housed in the most holy place. It represented God's throne, a symbol of his authority and presence.
It's like a mini throne room.
Yes. And above the Ark was the mercy seat.
The mercy seat.
This is where the high priest would sprinkle the blood of a sacrificed animal on the Day of Atonement.
Day of Atonement.
Seeking forgiveness for the sins of the people.
So even in the Old Testament, we see this idea of atonement.
Absolutely.
This need for reconciliation with God.
Yeah. And you know what? This act of sacrifice foreshadows Christ's sacrifice.
Okay.
Where his blood would be shed to atone for the sins of all humanity.
So the tabernacle is like this blueprint.
In a way it is.
For understanding Christ's sacrifice and the new covenant.
It's amazing how these ancient rituals and symbols connect to the core of Christianity.
That is amazing.
It is.
What other elements were there?
All right, so there was the lampstand.
The lampstand.
Which represented God's light,
Okay.
constantly illuminating the tabernacle.
Even in the darkness.
Even in the darkest of nights.
Light. Such a powerful symbol.
It is. It represents guidance, truth.
Yeah.
A reminder that even in the wilderness, even when they felt lost, God's light was always present.
Guiding their path?
Guiding their path.
Okay, we're right.
And then there was the table of showbread.
The table of showbread. Okay.
Which symbolized God's provision.
Okay.
Just as he provided manna in the wilderness, he continued to sustain them.
Through his blessings.
Through his blessings.
It's like a constant reminder that he's taking care of them.
He's providing for them.
Even when times are tough.
Even in the most challenging circumstances.
And what about the altar of incense?
Ah, the altar of incense.
That one's interesting.
It represented prayer.
Prayer.
The rising smoke symbolized the prayers of the people.
Okay.
Ascending to heaven.
Wow.
A constant reminder of their communication.
And communion.
And communion with God.
So it's like this whole tabernacle is just filled with meaning.
Every detail.
And symbolism.
Pointing towards a deeper understanding.
Of their relationship with God.
Yes.
And their journey of faith.
Exactly.
But then.
There's always a but then.
There's the golden calf.
Oh, yes. The golden calf incident.
Like, how could they?
Right. You'd think after all they'd seen.
All the miracles.
They would know better. But human nature is what it is.
So what happened?
They got impatient.
Waiting for Moses?
Waiting for Moses to come down from Mount Sinai.
Okay.
And in their fear and uncertainty, they reverted to something familiar.
Something tangible.
Something tangible.
A golden calf.
A golden cat.
To represent God.
Yeah.
They forgot everything.
They forgot the awe-inspiring power they'd witnessed.
It's like a classic case of...
out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
They needed something right there.
Something to see.
To touch.
To worship.
Yeah. It's a sobering reminder that faith is not a one-time event.
It's a journey.
It's a continuous journey.
A daily choice to trust God.
Even when we don't understand his ways.
Even when we don't understand.
Exactly.
So Moses comes down from the mountain.
He comes down.
Sees this golden calf.
And he is furious.
I bet.
I mean, he saw it as a betrayal,
A betrayal of the covenant.
a rejection of the God who had delivered them.
I mean, I can't blame him for being angry.
He smashes the tablets of the Ten Commandments
Smashes them.
in anger,
Wow.
and he confronts the people
About their sin.
about their transgression.
Yeah.
It's a tense moment. The
Yeah.
covenant's in jeopardy,
And God's wrath.
is burning against the Israelites.
So what happens?
Moses steps in.
As an intercessor,
He pleads with God
to spare the people
to spare them, reminding him of his promises,
his mercy.
his mercy. And God relents.
Wow.
He forgives the Israelites.
Real.
And he renews his covenant with them.
That's incredible.
It shows the depth of his love,
And compassion.
even in the face of disobedience.
So they get a second chance.
They do.
What happens to the golden calf?
Moses destroys it,
He destroys it.
grinds it into powder,
Wow.
scatters it in the water.
Like a symbolic act.
A complete break from idolatry
A return.
to the purity of their covenant with Yahweh.
So the covenant is renewed.
Yes,
The golden calf is destroyed.
gone.
And the tabernacle.
Stands as a symbol of God's presence.
Okay, so they're back on track.
For now,
For now.
the wilderness is still a place of testing
Right.
and transformation.
What other challenges do they face?
Well, they face hunger, thirst, attacks from enemies.
All those things you don't want to deal with.
Right. But it's through these trials that they learn valuable lessons
About themselves.
about their relationship with God.
And about true freedom.
Exactly. The wilderness becomes a metaphor.
For our own spiritual journeys.
We all face those wilderness experiences.
This times of testing.
Doubt, uncertainty.
Yeah.
But it's through those trials that we grow.
We learn to depend on God. And we discover the meaning of freedom.
That's the key. True freedom isn't just about escaping external constraints.
Okay.
It's about that internal transformation.
So it's an inside job
It is.
that allows us to live in right relationship with God.
And with each other.
So the wilderness,
Which sounds crucible.
where their character is refined,
Their faith is tested.
their understanding of God is deepened.
It's a process.
So they've escaped Egypt. They've received the law.
Right.
They've built the tabernacle.
They face the golden calf.
And they're navigating the challenges of the wilderness.
It's quite a journey.
What happens next?
Well, their journey takes them through various trials and triumphs,
Okay.
each one shaping their identity as a people chosen by God.
They're still becoming.
They're still becoming
So what are some key takeaways
from this wilderness journey.
that we can apply to our own lives?
One thing is that the journey of faith isn't always easy.
Okay.
There will be challenges, setbacks.
Times when we question everything.
Exactly. But it's in those moments of doubt and struggle
That we discover God's faithfulness.
and the strength of our own resilience.
Our faith is refined in the fire.
That's a great way to put it.
Another lesson
Yes.
is the power of community.
The Israelites weren't on this journey alone.
They had each other.
They relied on each other for support, encouragement, accountability.
We need that too.
We do. We need each other.
On our spiritual journeys.
We need that support system
To encourage us. To challenge us.
to remind us of God's faithfulness when we're tempted to give up.
And finally,
Perseverance.
perseverance.
The Israelites faced numerous setbacks,
Yeah.
delays, but they never lost sight of the promised land.
They kept going.
They continued to move forward,
Trusting that God would lead them.
trusting in the unseen
It's a message of hope.
and resilience.
No matter what obstacles we face.
Yeah.
No matter how long the journey seems.
Who can persevere?
Knowing that God is with us.
Guiding our steps.
Leading us towards his purpose.
The wilderness journey wasn't just about reaching a physical destination.
No.
It was about shaping the Israelites into the people God had called them to be.
It was about becoming
Becoming
their best selves.
Yes. Refining their character.
Yeah.
Deepening their faith
Preparing them.
for the promised land.
So it's like a blueprint
It is.
for our own spiritual journeys.
It reminds us that the path to true freedom and fulfillment
Mm-hmm.
is often marked by challenges, but with God's guidance
The supportive community,
and a spirit of perseverance
we can overcome any obstacle.
and embrace the life God has destined for us.
The Exodus story.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder.
That even in the midst of trials,
God is working.
He's shaping us,
Yeah.
refining us, leading us towards a future filled with hope.
The Israelites have come a long way.
They have.
From slavery in Egypt,
The wilderness,
they've faced challenges,
moments of doubt,
disobedience,
but they've also witnessed the power of God.
and the transformative power of his grace.
They've learned valuable lessons,
About faith.
community, perseverance.
And as their wilderness journey continues,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how these lessons prepare them
For the challenges and triumphs that lie ahead,
as they move closer to the promised land.
closer to the promised land.
So as we move into the final part,
Of our exploration of Exodus,
we'll delve deeper into the significance of their wilderness journey
examining how it shapes their identity
and how it foreshadows our own spiritual journeys.
in our pursuit of true freedom and fulfillment.
All right, so we've journeyed with the Israelites from slavery in Egypt,
All the way to Mount Sinai.
witnessed incredible miracles.
Yeah, the power of God.
But even with the tabernacle built,
Even with the covenant established,
the story doesn't end there.
no, it doesn't. The book of Exodus leaves us with this image
Okay.
of the tabernacle completed, the glory of God filling that sanctuary.
But it's not the final destination.
It's not the end of the journey. It's like they've built a foundation.
Okay.
But the real work of living out the covenant,
Of becoming a nation?
yeah, that still lies ahead.
And that's what makes Exodus so relevant to us today.
It's not just an ancient story,
It's a blueprint.
a blueprint for our own spiritual journeys.
We all face wilderness experiences.
Times of testing, doubt, uncertainty
So what can we learn
from the Israelites' experience.
that we can apply to our own lives?
Well, one thing is recognizing our own Egypts.
Our own Egypt.
Those places, mindsets, habits
That hold us back.
from experiencing true freedom.
So just as the Israelites had to leave Egypt,
We have to identify and confront those things that enslave us.
those internal pharaohs,
Yeah, those patterns of fear, doubt, self-limitation.
we got to break free.
We do.
And just like the Israelites needed God's guidance,
To navigate the wilderness.
we need to cultivate that connection.
To a power greater than ourselves.
Whether you call it God,
Higher purpose. Inner compass.
that connection is essential.
For navigating the challenges of life.
We're not on this journey alone.
We're not.
And Exodus reminds us
Yeah.
that freedom is a journey.
Not a destination.
The Israelites messed up along the way.
They grumbled. They questioned.
They built a golden calf,
They did.
but even they were chosen by God.
It shows us that spiritual growth is a process.
It's about learning from our mistakes
Seeking forgiveness.
and continuing to move forward.
Even when we stumble.
So it's not about being perfect.
No.
It's about embracing the messiness
Of the journey.
and relying on God's grace.
To guide us through it.
And finally,
They trust.
the importance of trusting.
In the unseen.
The Israelites had to walk by faith,
Not by sight.
trusting that God was leading them.
Even when they couldn't see the path ahead.
That's tough.
It is. It's easy to trust when things are good.
But when you're in the wilderness,
When the future is uncertain.
that's when faith is truly tested.
And that's where Exodus offers us hope.
Encouragement.
That even when we feel lost,
When we can't see the way forward,
God is still working.
guiding us towards his purpose.
That's the message of Exodus.
So as we wrap up,
What's the one thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Exodus is more than just an ancient story,
It's a mirror
reflecting our own journeys.
of faith, freedom, the search for meaning.
It reminds us that we're not alone.
God is with us in the wilderness.
And even in the most challenging moments,
There's always hope.
for a brighter future,
The Exodus story transcends time and circumstance.
offering guidance, comfort, inspiration.
For anyone navigating their own wilderness,
So no matter where you are on your journey,
remember the lessons of Exodus.
embrace the process
Trust in the unseen.
and never give up hope.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Exodus.
It's been a journey. And remember,
The wilderness is just the beginning.
we'll see you next time.
Exodus begins with a powerful story of God's deliverance of his people from slavery. But do we see God's hand at work in our own lives, especially when we feel trapped in difficult situations? Reflect on the times when God has rescued you from your own forms of bondage. Are you trusting that God can lead you to freedom, just as he led the Israelites through the Red Sea? The burning bush marks a pivotal moment when Moses is called by God. But do we recognize when God is calling us? Often, his call comes when we least expect it. Reflect on your own life. How has God called you to serve or step out in faith? Are you willing to respond as Moses did, despite feeling inadequate or uncertain? Exodus reminds us that God is not just the deliverer, but also the one who provides. The manna and quail in the wilderness were reminders that God's provision never fails. But how often do we worry about our own needs? Reflect on the ways God has provided for you, even in unexpected ways. Are you trusting in his provision, or are you relying on your own efforts? The giving of the 10 Commandments shows us that God desires holiness and obedience. But how often do we try to define right and wrong on our own terms? Reflect on the areas where God's word calls you to obedience. Are you following his commands, or are there areas where you're holding back from fully trusting him? Exodus also teaches us that God desires a relationship with his people. He gives instructions for building the tabernacle, a place for his presence to dwell among them. But do we make space for God in our lives today? Reflect on how you can invite God's presence into your everyday life. Are you actively seeking to draw near to him? The golden calf incident shows how easily we can turn away from God when things get difficult or unclear. But how often do we turn to idols in our own lives, things that distract us from God's truth? Reflect on the things you prioritize over God's presence. Are there any idols that need to be cast down today? Exodus emphasizes that God is not only a God of deliverance, but also a God of justice and mercy. He disciplines his people, but always with a view toward restoration. How do we view God's discipline in our lives? Reflect on how God's correction has shaped you. Are you open to his guidance, even when it's difficult? As we close the book of Exodus, we see that God's plan for his people is ongoing. Just as he led the Israelites through the wilderness, he continues to lead us today. Reflect on how God is leading you in your own life. Are you following his guidance with trust and faith? If this message has inspired you, subscribe, like, and comment below. How are you responding to God's call? Share this with someone who needs to hear that God is leading them, too.